Okay, this is the final part of the MEST 2 coursework, which is the evaluation. This is a podcast for that. It's worth 20 marks, so it's worth 25% of your overall grade for the products. Okay, the evaluation has to be 1,500 words long, so you can go over by about 200 words if you need to, but please don't go over any more than that. Okay, so what we're looking at in the evaluation is we're looking for you to talk about the process and your products. Now, you need to make sure you don't just describe what you did in this, but you need to talk about things that have occurred and the strengths and weaknesses that have come from this. Don't just write, I did a storyboard, then I did a location search, etc., etc., because that won't get you the marks. That will get you right down in the bottom of the categories. So this is what you need to do for the evaluation. In front of us here, we can see these are the marks. We want everyone to get into level 4, because that's where the top marks are. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to start off by, in your evaluation, by telling me or the examiner what brief you picked and why you picked it. So why did you pick brief 1 instead of brief 2 or brief 3? And be specific as to why you picked it. Are you interested in it? Was something... would you prefer to work in film? Do you like film better than music, etc., etc.? And then after you've done that, you're going to talk about why you picked the platforms that you did and why you left out the third platform. What attracted you more towards broadcast and print than e-media, for example? And be specific when you say this. After you've done that, okay, you're going to talk about what you actually did. So you need to talk about the process and then evaluate the final product. To start with, I would start by saying who the target audience was for the products that the brief and the products you created, and how you intended to target them. So, if you put film, you would say something like, the target audience for my film is 18 to 30-year-old males who would fall within the demographic groupings of C1 to E. The psychographics that appeal towards these groups are, say, violence, sex, alcohol, etc., etc. Now, for that bit, you need to be specific. If you just don't just put the target audience is 13 to 65 and leave it as that. Okay, you need to be specific about the target audience. Then what you're going to do once you've done that is you're going to talk about how you intended to target them. So, what was the point of picking this target audience? What things did you need to incorporate which would target towards that group specifically? For example, the film that I made is an action film. The action film will contain scenes of violence. This appeals to my target audience because, okay, and that's what you're going to do. You talked about the brief and the brief that you selected. You're going to talk about the pre-production work that you did. So. First of all, you're going to talk about the research that you did, and you're going to tell me why you did it. What was the point of doing the research? What did you learn from it, and how has it helped you? How has it helped you to develop your products? How has it informed you about the target audience? How did it tell you about what you needed to put into your products? How did it tell you about the codes and conventions, etc., etc.? Then, once you've talked about your research that you've done, then you'll talk about your pre-production tasks. So, and don't spend very long on the pre-production tasks because the examiner doesn't want to know that you made a storyboard, but they do need to know that you made a storyboard because say that it would help you to keep track of your time. So you can say that you did various pre-production tasks and why you did them, but make sure you keep this quite short. Don't write more than a paragraph on all the pre-production tasks because really the examiner wants to know about your products and the strengths and weaknesses. Remember that everything to do with pre-production, storyboards, scripts, designs, etc., etc., are done so that you can manage your own time and also so that you can make sure that you're appealing to the correct audiences and the audiences that you mentioned earlier on. And also remember when you talk about target audience, remember there is primary and secondary audience. So linking these into them. So make sure you mention some of the following when you talk about the research and pre-production. That you deconstructed product to find out information about target audiences. That you identified demographic groups for your print work and films. that you identified the language used, the various representations constructed, the content required, codes and conventions, ideas, etc., etc. Make sure you talk about those within your evaluation and linking your research and your pre-production work into that. Okay, then after you've talked about your pre-production work, you're going to talk about your products. So remember that you made a different number of products. Each product is for different audiences, which is key in here. So tell me about what you made. Okay, so tell me about the product that you made specifically, and tell me about the codes and conventions you used within these products, and link in why you use these codes and conventions. What was the point of incorporating them? And again, this links to your target audience. Tell me about the target audience for each piece. Remember the primary and secondary audiences and be specific. Remember that each product that you make may have a different audience. They're not necessarily all going to be the same. Your print work, the audience for that, depending on what magazine you base it on, could be for a different primary audience compared to your film piece that you've made. So just remember that. Then tell me about your product, okay? And does it match what you said you're going to make? In your proposal, does your product link? If it does, say why. If it's not the same as your product, say why not. You don't lose marks by your original idea not being the same as your final idea, but you lose marks if you don't explain why it's changed. So there is reasons for this, why it has changed. It could be time, it could be that you were being too ambitious, it could be any number of reasons like that. It's fine to put that in here. Then I want you to talk about strengths of your products. So I want at least 3 examples in detail of strengths to do with each product. And tell me about why they're a strength, why are they good, and how you managed to make this strength. Or so, did you construct it in a way? Did you use some sort of effects? Did you play around with filters? And explain why it's a strength. You need to link the strengths into the target audience. Remember, and the genre. Remember, everything here needs to link into this. Then I want you to talk about weaknesses. I want at least 2 examples of weaknesses, and I want you to explain why it's a weakness and offer a solution to how you could solve it or how you did solve it. Okay? And I want at least 2. You want to be aiming for about 3 or 4, really. Now, after you talked about that, go into more detail. The product is where the majority of the marks are given in terms of your evaluation. So if we just look at the spec, so if we're looking at the spec to get the top marks, we've got to make sure you're in this band. You need to make sure that your evaluation pre-production material contains extended evidence and application of research, and gives a clear description of the target audience and how you intended to target them. That's what comes into your evaluation. You're telling me specifically for the product who the target audiences are and how you intended to target them. And one of the strengths will be that you targeted your audience in the following ways. The strengths and weakness of the production is listed. So it might not even be your product. It could be some of the stuff that you talk about in there could be to do with your filming process or your graphics, etc., etc. And you make sure that you talk about the key concepts in there, and you'll see that there's some exemplar material on this. And then to get into here, you use the correct language of media studies. You use it very well, and that's important within here to get into the top marks. So within the product bit, make sure you talk about those things. Then when you've talked about these, you need to give me a paragraph about the third media product, the one you didn't make. How you would have used it, how you would make it, how you would combine all these products together. So how the website would link to the print that would link to the film, or how the print would link to the website, it would link to the film, along those sort of lines. Now, to make sure you can get the top marks, you must use these words within here, within your evaluation. So when you talk about the product, you've got to make sure you mention genre. Make sure you talk about representation. What are the representations found within your product? Do you stereotype people in certain ways? Why have you done this? We've already talked about the audience. You talk about the narrative. Is the narrative strong? Is it weak? Did you manage to make it? Did you organise it in the correct way? Would you have changed it in any way? What ideology? What values are you trying to get across? What's the message of the product? How do you get the message across to the audience? Is it successful? So you must make sure you mention these words and explain how your products are suited towards these elements within your evaluation. Find all the information for the evaluation I've just talked about in MEST 2, Task 5, Assignment 6 evaluation. And there's a writing framework in there, the one I was just talking to you about, and some example evaluations there which you can look at. Do look at these, do read them, see how other people have done them. That's the reasons that they're there. Okay, so good luck with that.